Welcome to Unit 4 of the theory course, where we're going to look at intervals. As with every other topic on the ABRSM course, the published books drip feed the necessary information over the 5 grades, making it difficult for the student to get the entire picture until the very end. In these lessons, we're going to cover the whole topic in 3 short lessons, in a way which will, I hope, make rather more sense because you will get the whole picture much more quickly. First of all though, have you completed Unit 3, Keys and Scales? If not, go back to Unit 3 as this unit builds upon the knowledge you will gain there. Okay, let's start. Musicians use the word interval to describe the difference in pitch between 2 notes. It isn't enough to say that there's a big gap or a little gap between the notes, or to say that one note is a little higher or a lot higher or lower than its neighbour. As with all things to do with music theory, this unit is about equipping you with the correct technical language which will allow you to speak a common language with other musicians. So, an interval is the gap in pitch between 2 notes, and intervals are described using 2 elements, an adjective and a number. In this lesson, we're going to look at the number part of the interval. First of all, 2 rules. All intervals are measured from the lower note to the higher note, even if the lower note comes after the higher note in a tune. This means that the interval is a measure of how much higher than the low note the higher note actually is. And rule number 2, musicians count intervals inclusively. So when they count the first note in the counting that they do. If that sounds complicated, please let me assure you that it isn't, and a few examples will see you doing this with no difficulty at all. What is the interval between these notes? Okay, we have C and D. So if we start with C and count up to D, CD, that's 2 letters. Therefore, it is a second. In this example, C and E. So we count from C up to E, C, D, E. That's 3 letters. This is a third. D up to A. D, E, F, G, A. 5 letters. This is a fifth. G up to F. G, A, B, C, D, E, F. 7 letters of the alphabet. Therefore, this is a 7th. A to A, come on, you should know this by now. This is an octave. F up to G, an octave and a bit away. F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's a 9th. And it's the same if we have the notes back to front. G is the first note and F is the second note, but it's a descending interval. We count from the bottom note to the top. F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's still a 9th. Here's one in the bass clef. C to F. C, D, E, F. A 4th. F upwards to C. F, G, A, B, C, a 5th. One in the alto clef here, C up to A, C, D, E, F, G, A, 6 letters, it's a 6th. D down to E in the tenor clef, starting with the lower note E, counting up to D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, that's a 7th. So far, so good. It really is as simple as that. If you're seeking only to establish the number part of the interval, you can even do away with identifying the names of the notes, especially if you're working in the alto or tenor clef and feel pressured for time in the examination. If the two notes are in a space and its neighbouring line, then the interval is a second, like these. You'll see that I've done away with the clef, so we can't tell what the notes actually are. If the two notes are on neighbouring lines, like this, then the interval is a third. Or if the two notes are on neighbouring spaces, like this, then the interval is also a third. If the two notes are on lines like this, with another line between them, then the interval is a fifth. And if the two notes are on spaces like this, and with another space between them, this interval is also a fifth. So, if you're asked only for the numeric part of the interval, this can save a lot of time by cutting out the effort to identify notes, particularly in the alto or tenor clefs. Before we move on, I need to point out that so far we've been dealing with intervals between a note and its neighbour. These intervals can be described as melodic intervals. We can also use the knowledge we've just gained to describe intervals in chords, and they are called harmonic intervals. Be careful not to confuse melodic and harmonic intervals with melodic and harmonic minor scales. So, let's describe the following harmonic intervals. Firstly, a few with clefs. Here we have a treble clef with D and E. And we can see that that is a second. An alto clef with G and C. G up to C, it makes it a fourth. Here's a tenor clef, F up to D, a sixth. And a bass clef, B up to B, an eighth or an octave. And here are some intervals without a clef. Here's a third and a fifth and a seventh and a ninth. That last interval of a ninth must suggest to you that we could also be asked to identify intervals of a 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and so on, and so on. That is absolutely true, but musicians sometimes use another way of describing intervals greater than an octave by ignoring the first octave of the interval and pretending it was never there. So in this example, we have a ninth. But if we identify the names of the bottom and top notes and don't count after we've reached the top note's letter name, we have a second. And to distinguish this interval with the extra octave added in, we can call this ninth a compound second. And in the same way, we can call a 10th a compound third, an 11th a compound fourth, a 12th a compound fifth, and so on. Notice that the difference between the two ways of describing an interval greater than an octave is 7. If you have a 10th, subtract 7 to get 3, and it's a compound third. So a 13th, when we take 7 away, is a compound sixth. And that, basically, is all you need to know about the number part of how to describe an interval. Points to remember from this lesson are that intervals can be melodic, in other words, neighbouring each other in a melody or tune, or harmonic, that is, written within a harmony or chord. Intervals are always counted inclusively and always from the bottom note up to the top note. Come back to lesson 2 to learn about the adjective part of how to label an interval.